session from the regulators is to give people an idea of what the industry is doing, in the wake of these incidents and all these recommendations, what they're doing to implement all the safety things that have been found out. And we've asked, and we've got some great speakers today from particular companies who are not only going to talk about industry commitments to safety, but also how they've kind of gone about implementing that stuff within their own companies and how it really hits in the field. So I'm glad to introduce Craig Pierson, president of Marathon. You'll notice he's got one of the little white advisor things on his name tag because Marathon's been very involved with kind of providing some checks and balances on some of the stuff we're putting out to the safety advocates. And I think I met Craig for the first time, boy, it must have been 4 or 5 years ago now. I was invited to actually speak to an all-employees meeting at Marathon in Findlay, Ohio. And we've kind of partnered on a number of things ever since then. So, Mr. Pierson.
Okay. Carl, that was about 7 years ago.
Wow.
So I thank you for the opportunity to talk about what Marathon Pipeline's doing to move towards zero incidents. I'll speak a little bit about our priorities. First, I'm going to talk about the always fascinating topic of strategic planning, but I think you'll see a tie to some of the discussion that's already taken place. We're going to talk a little bit about what we're doing with pipeline integrity, excavation damage protection, prevention, and talk about what we're doing in our control room, employee and contractor safety, and then talk about some things from the industry perspective. We spent a lot of time the last year updating our strategic plan, and we've called it Focus 2020. Focus with the idea of focusing intent, but also with the idea that we need to be constantly adjusting it. We need to be constantly adjusting 2020 with the idea that it's a long-term vision, but we have good clarity of that vision. It is enormously important if we want to move to zero incidents to get all of our employees pulling towards that, seeing the same vision and sharing it, being engaged in it. We got 650 employees spread out over about 15 states, and you need to find effective ways to communicate to them. We've got our mission and our vision out in front of them so they can see what's important to us. I think more importantly, we've got guiding principles out there, and our guiding principles help tell ourselves what we want to be and who we are. And there's some really important elements to this. At the top, it's difficult to see, I'm sure, but the top is leading safety performance. It's not just leading safety performance in the context of within the industry, but we're telling our employees that they need to be safety leaders and no one gets hurt. And we are articulating here that we are guardians of public safety, and we want all 650 employees understanding and appreciating that. Our next guiding principle is exceptional planning. And you think about the complexity of what we're doing in today, and it touches on Jeff's very last bullet. You need to have a plan. It needs to be both long-term, it needs to speak to shorter-term, couple years out, it needs to come to the year, and it needs to be directing what you're doing within the year. You've got to have and be focused on delivering and being accountable to your plan. In the middle is operational excellence, and we see it as our driving force towards flawless performance. And we use those words, flawless performance, and it's the notion of zero. And one of our best ways of measuring our performance in our industry is spill not one drop. And in our company, we take that literally. We are counting stains, we are counting drips, and of course that we want to prevent the larger spills. But we articulate that as part of our culture. We have added to this being a premier learning organization. If your goal is zero, and if your goal is flawless performance, every day there's going to be things that aren't flawless, and you need to report them. And we're finding that what's one of the big issues in reporting? If people report, they worry about blame. And it speaks to Mark's talk as well. I want to add, though, it wasn't discussed. If you report and if you track, if you trend, and you populate yourself with recommendations, what hasn't been discussed, the hardest work is implementing those recommendations, getting 650 people to understand I need to do something differently. That's at the very end. That's where behavior change, and that, I think, is the hardest portion of this. We talk about an intense business focus. As Jeff said, we need to earn money. We need to put that in context to our employees. They need to be able to understand that and how they contribute to that. And putting that in perspective with all of our other objectives. And at the bottom is engaged employees. I am confident that we've got committed employees in Marathon Pipeline. What we haven't done as good a job is engaging them. They need to be helping us achieve our goals, getting their ideas, not just waiting to be told, but being part of it. And I'll touch upon how an example of that a little bit later. So that's our strategic planning. Pipeline integrity. The thing that we've learned over the last few years is that we need to rotate technologies. There are all kinds of different technologies. On the board, on the table back there, there are some little plastic cards that define what all these tools are, and I've got to carry them around with me because I can't keep track of exactly what acronym and what tool does what. But if you're interested in that, you'll find little plastic cards about all these tools. What we found is that we need to rotate technologies, that we need to look for the same flaw using different tools. That's one thing we found. And the other thing that these tools do is they identify flaws we didn't know we had or threats we didn't know we had. So we rotate these tools. We also are trying to participate, we are participating in the Pipeline Research Council International to develop the next tools. And we're developing a tool with PRCI in the industry to find stress corrosion cracking in dents. We ran that tool through one of our pipelines recently, and this is an industry effort, and we'll share the data, but we've seen good progress doing that. Lastly is sharing. We do share. We share what we do. We do not compete on safety. We share what we do, and we also try to learn what others are doing. Excavation damage prevention remains a significant threat for us, and I think it will be, probably darn near forever. We monitor all activity. We have boots on the ground when we have activity within 50 feet of the pipe. And we are trying to make sure that the people out there are trained, they know what they're doing, and we remain good at that. We're trying to get the safety damage prevention message out. We present to elementary schools the safe digging message. It's interesting to see how that takes root with kids and them taking that message home. It's going to be a slow effort, but it's fun to see that progress. We're trying to get the 811 message out. You see a picture of 811. That's the first tank in the state of Ohio it's a highly visible tank, and we're trying to get that 811 message out through that. One of the other efforts that we're doing is trying to increase our message penetration with what we call our pipeline residents. We've got the regulatory requirement to communicate to everyone within a quarter of a mile, but we're really trying to be very good about the people who live on ground that intersects our pipeline right-of-way. We want those people to we want to have a good relationship with them, and we want them to be the most educated. They'll help defend the pipeline. They'll help defend their property. They'll know how to respond. So we're really trying to step that up. And we sent out safe digging kits, and on the back table you'll see our safe digging guide, which we prepared, and we partnered with Pipeline Safety Trust in doing this, trying to get that to be an effective document. It looks like that. If you're interested, pick one up. We try to make a high-quality document, and when we sent it out with more information than we ever have before. We sent it out with a county map, not just a generic map, but a county map, and we told folks how big the pipeline is that they nearby, what does it carry, and this is guidance that Pipeline Safety Trust provided to us. And we tried a feedback mechanism. If folks will respond to us, give us some information, tell us what they think, they're in the drawing for a $500 reward, and the drawing hasn't taken place yet, but we are getting a little more feedback. It was not a step change. $500 did not deliver a huge step change in response. Our next effort in damage prevention is try to get with the excavators. What we see is excavators who know better but don't recognize the risk. They are not modifying their behavior, and we're producing a video with John Ratzenberger. I think I've got his name right. He was Cliff on Cheers, and we're trying to produce a compelling video to get to excavators, and he's helping us produce some public safety announcements. In our control rooms, we have what we call a go-to-safety culture. And when our controllers are sitting at their consoles and they see something that doesn't look right, they've got the requirement to shut down. And it's basically immediate shutdown. And as we have our controllers move through that control center, it's a churn of people that move through there. We've got to keep that message out, and we've had that out for about 10 years now. And we have our mission is to make sure we shut down if we've got a problem, make sure we don't start up with a problem, and we've been successful now for about a dozen years with that. Alarm management, big issue for us. We're dedicating a new one full-time resource to it. We've been working on it for about 3 or 4 years. We had over 700 different alarm types. We've got that now consolidated down to about 477 different alarm types. Each one of them has a prescribed procedure to respond. And we're constantly trying to figure out how do you get the right number of alarms and not get alarm fatigue. Our controller hiring and training program is critical to us. We've got a different business model in our control room. We hire college graduates off campus and we train them. It's been highly successful, but when you bring in someone who doesn't have familiarity with the industry, you've got to have a very robust training program, but it's been effective for us. Constantly working on fatigue management. We have a strict work schedule, but we're also participating with PRCI on what is the right workload for a console. We're helping with that study. Lastly, we share with that as well. We participate in the industry control room management team. Employee and contractor safety. This is an interesting discussion, especially in context of prior discussions. Our culture is no one gets hurt. And we recently began a technician-led behavior-based safety program. That's their poster, Believe in Zero. That's what they made themselves, and we funded it with 2 full-time equivalent technicians. That's nothing but they do. They try to get this behavior-based safety program working. This is where technicians are observing other technicians. And we've got in place a no name, no blame. And they have technicians that document how other technicians are doing their work and do they have the right PPE, personal protective equipment. And it's been an interesting evolution to see this being led from the employee base. I shouldn't say this, but we've had a good year. We've had no OSHA recordables since September 2000. Well, it was 1 year without an employee OSHA recordable. Where we are having our accidents are with contractors. And we've got to get this same specialized training that we've got with our employees. We've got to figure out how to push it into our contractor work base, and that's another step change beyond getting our employees on board. We've got a personal protective equipment handout. It's back there if you're interested. This is employee and contractor safety, and it talks about what you need to be wearing depending upon your task. If you're an operator, you might find that of interest. Finally, this year we received responsible care certification, and folks in here may not be familiar with responsible care. It was developed in the chemical industry, and we have outside verification that we've got safety management systems in place that are indicative of a responsible care company, and we got recertified this year. Last subject on what we're doing, industry participation is important to us. There's 8 industry initiatives and soon to be 9. And we've got, if you're interested in those, it's back there on the table as well. We participate directly in research and development and leak detection and enhanced data integration. Those terms probably may not be terribly meaningful. We participate on those committees. I'm executive sponsor on sharing safety practices, and my personal pet, I'm executive sponsor on strategic planning, trying for the industry to do better strategic planning. One of the initiatives that you'll see and there's a lot of discussion going around, is having the right safety management systems in place. There's a lot of discussion going on about that, and we're participating in that as well. And lastly, I participate on the Technical Advisory Committee. So one of Carl's questions that he posed at the top of this session is, so how would you know what we're doing? And I got thinking about, chances are you wouldn't know. There's a relatively small audience that would know what Marathon Pipeline is doing, but I'll explain why we hope you don't know. We embrace FEMSA's role in trust but verify. We look at audits as opportunities. Our goal with audits is no blemishes, nothing, and we work our hind end off to try to get no findings. So success is silence, and we're good with that. So we don't want you to see our name. We work very hard that you don't, but the folks that we do want to know what we're doing are our residents. We want them to know what we're doing. We want them to trust us. And our emergency responders, we want them to know Marathon Pipeline and the things we're doing to improve. And of course our regulators. And we've had a long relationship with the Pipeline Safety Trust, so through forums like this we hope that you know what Marathon Pipeline's doing. But if you're outside that audience, you probably don't. So thank you very much, Carl.